This is for Steve. I wrote this about. Steve's 15 now, so I wrote it maybe 15 years ago when he was a beautiful little baby instead of a beautiful big boy. And yeah, turbulent times, always turbulent times, but this is what makes us, I guess. This is what breaks us. It's up to you, isn't it? Anyway, I never had a name for it, actually. I don't think I did, so it'll remain nameless, my love, for now. But it is just in case you think it's about a love or a relationship with a woman. It's not. It's about my son, but that'll be clear enough as we go through it as well. Okay. And yeah, we're in a big sense we're put on here. We come on here to make our own music in our own inimitable style. It doesn't have to mean anything to anybody else. It's the important thing. It's 4/3/2 tuning, and it's in A. Hey, baby, they say that I'm crazy. I'm just another Jekyll and Hyde. I'm faithless, maybe. I'm idle and lazy. Truth or fiction, I see only two sides, and I'll rise from the shadow. Go towards the light. I know and love you, baby. Sleep well tonight. The sinking lows, the sinking shorelines. It's high time to get the hell out of Dodge. With more ebbs and flows, more hardships and mean times. This is no life for my infant on sludge, and I'll rise from the shadow. Grow towards the light. I know I love you, baby. Sleep well tonight. At dawn I'll meet you and we'll settle love out into the great blue yonder. And tough, now you're right there, baby, peaceful and happy, and all is just as it seems. Everything's rosy, nothing is crazy, though it's far from the end, it justifies the means, and I'll rise from the shadow. Run towards the light. I know and love you, baby. You slept well that night. I rose from the shadow. I embraced the light. Now you know it. Now you know it. Now you know. Love me, baby, no more required. Oh, sorry, I was on mute there. Yeah, that's a song for Steve. I wrote it 15, 16, 17 years ago now. So I have no name for it, which is funny enough, isn't it? And me all about the no name. So I think it speaks for itself. And yeah, of course, I love my boy then, and I love him now. I loved him before then, and I love him after now. You know, eternity before and after. That's what love is, isn't it? I like the term. You know, the way all words are sort of. We can now attach our own sentiment and sound and vibration to words. Uh, Words are beautiful, but they have become corrupted. So we can change what we like, really. You know, and I like changing the word love because, of course, when you look at the word live and evil, it's one is the other backwards. You know, it's mirrored. Same with devil. Devil is lived. You know, love is oval backwards. No, it isn't. It's evil. But that's the word I like. Yeah, it's oval. Oval. So you know, we can change things how we like. I hope that came across okay. I know there was problems last time with the synchronization, and it was sort of stopgap. So I think I changed power settings, and I hope that maybe I should check as well that I came through okay. And I'll go into the chat and say hello to friends and potentially foe alike. You know. Unmute again. Okay. How you doing? Uh, regulars know what this is. I hope you'll raise one yourself. This is the canned coffee. So it's just go through it. How you doing, Dell and Casper? I know I sort of started up and then I went away and had a smoke, a bit of smoke here, and I had something to drink, and I came back. But look, there's no hurry. I'm sure there is a lot going on these days, isn't there? Man, there's so much going on. So yeah, this is not about any sort of set routine. We do what we do, you know. It do what it do, Del. Yeah, there's no sort of structure you have to cling to and adhere to. And anyone, if you know me, like, yeah, I would abhor that sort of thing anyway, you know. But yeah, canned coffee. I like it. I like the idea, and I like the slogan as well. Canned coffee, coffee, proper coffee. You know, you can do everything properly as well. So get your proper coffee and spoon of that, spoon of honey, 2 spoons coconut oil, lovely little sprinkle of your favorite cannabis tipple, whatever that may be. In Ireland, we're sort of very restricted here. You know, your local dealer, if you want. No, I'm not talking about the alcohol dealer. They're everywhere. They're fucking everywhere. They're scum of the earth. You know, I'm talking about your local cannabis supplier. Yeah, you only have a choice of usually one, but usually the one you do get is good enough. So that's why you end up staying with the same person, you know. But yeah, sprinkle of that, a lovely generous sprinkle, whatever your fancy, and then nice piping hot water, distilled if you will. And always imbue it then, you know what I mean. First you do a nice stir around, and then imbue it with gratefulness, I guess. It can't harm anything, can it? And you are definitely appreciative of it, because not only is it coconut oil is good for you, well, in, you know, limited amounts. We're not about oil, we're about water, and water and oil don't mix, you know, so limited amounts is my thoughts on that. But yeah, not only are you getting the goodness of that, you're getting the goodness of honey, and well, you know, it's a nice satisfying beverage as well. And then you have the cannabis, I'm not going to say hit, you know, if you're a long-term smoker or a long-term user, you're not going to get that sort of hit. But yeah, we can ingest cannabis as well, and sort of all adds to the the experience. Yeah, so that's what I say. Canned coffee, just what the doctor didn't order. We know about the doctors, you know. So if you imbue it with a bit of gratefulness, thankfulness, love, Oval, you know, Bob's your uncle. Where you're losing, you know. Even if there's no goodness in it, you're after imbuing it with some sort of goodness in terms of, I'm not going to say belief, it's just sort of a knowing, yeah. And that's not even good as well, because what do we know? We know fuck all. We know absolutely nothing. Nothing. What can you say you know? I mean, it's a tough question, you know. It's a tough question. That's why I've looked at these forums as well. I'm out to, Jesus, just find out more shit. Like, you know, I want to talk to people. Well, if I do engage, this is what I'd be looking for, is open conversation. I want to get towards the truth or the heart of matters. You know what I mean? So if you have a certain point of view to offer on something that can shed light on any particular issue, it doesn't matter what the issue is. You know, shy away from some issues, but not that I can't deal with them, but just sometimes you don't want to get into the too dark areas. You don't want to get too deep into Jimmy Savile, although, you know, I have done when you, and again, that's a different story as well. Here's a question to anyone out here. You need to wake up now. This is we need to start fucking waking up and not going with the crowds here. This is the idea. We've been steered and said and led, we're missteered, you know. And again, no matter what I say about anybody, it's not about the man or the woman. There's no judgment there. I know it's a game. I know it. And listen, I'm not playing any roles. I have no affiliations. and of course, everyone's going to say that, and I'm thinking that you sort of take an oath or something, you know what I mean? So you'll lie to the extreme, you know, for the sake of the character, for the sake of the role you are playing. So anyone is free to say that, but yeah, I'm not afraid to talk about anything. Anyone wants to talk about anything, I'll broach it, you know, don't mind. So, because I have nothing to protect, you know, I have nothing to fear, I have nothing to, I don't know, to align myself with in terms of, you know, protection of truth or propagation of a lie, you know. I haven't taken any oaths or anything like that. And I literally have no affiliations. I don't use a legal name. Mark Taylor has been going around, as he's prone to do, as he always does, saying Pete is a liar. He talks about the legal name, but yet he uses it to claim benefits. I don't claim any benefits. I don't claim anything from anybody. I don't use the legal name, full stop. So, again, as I've mentioned many times, that brings its own problems, brings its own issues. But we all have our own circumstances in life. If you want to ask how I'm supporting myself, well, that's irrelevant in a sense. I could tell anyone my life, but it's not anyone's business in one sense. But yeah, you know, lies can be spread, and it's easy to spread it. We know anyone who's dealt with the ballers know that they're just continuously lying. But all it takes is just one lie, and then the question is presented to the hearer, you know, and people in general think that there's no smoke without fire. So this is how it works, you know, and this is the arena we're in. Just like it's none of my business, any of the circumstances. Sorry, let me go to chat. So I'll name a few names, you know, just the way you can understand the context I'm talking. Yeah, Casper. How you doing, Casper? He's across the way now. Like if I got on my jet boots, I'd be over to Casper in about, I don't know, 25 minutes. By car, you know, it'd take me about 7 minutes, I'm thinking, you know, but I haven't perfected the jet boots yet. Let me just check that my volume's coming. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so it's like Casper has his own route in life. Del has his own route in life. Cell Earther, how you doing? Drain Man, how you doing? We're all individuals. We all have our own route in life. So there's no onus on you to tell me anything about you, or vice versa. And of course, for the most part, we're dealing with nameless, faceless people. Not so much in the flatter side, but definitely on the baller side. You know what I mean? So, I mean, this isn't what it's about. This has always been about information. You know, and that's why I joined these hangouts. I know there's probably a few other hangouts on tonight. Jamie Brown is definitely on, and you know, there's plenty around. You've been exposed, I think, is on as well. But and there's definitely more, because interesting times we're living in. But that's the point here. You know, everyone has their own circumstances coming into this, and everyone does things for their own reasons. As always, it's all about the information. If you're in this game long enough, or this sort of search long enough, and the search is coming to an end, make no bones about it. The search is coming to an end, absolutely, and it's already ended. I think in a big way. It's just unfolding. You know, so if someone can come up, this is the way I think it is. If someone can come up and sort of present the truth, then maybe the game ends for everyone. Who knows? We just have no idea of a bigger picture. And yeah, it takes all sorts. It takes all sorts, and that's the point. Of course, anyone, and I hope to meet, I really do, of course, hope to meet Del and Casper. You know, pretty soon, I guess. And, you know, then we can get chatting. Then we can, once we get to know each other better, talk a bit more about, as you do, life circumstances and all that sort of stuff. But, yeah, I'm not a liar, and I'm not a hypocrite, or I'm not, at least I try not to be, you know. And that's not important to anyone else. Who am I talking to here? I'm talking to a screen, for God's sake, you know. So that's important to me. And yeah, again, it's all about the information. Once you get to a certain point, you realize it is all about the information, and you leave the personality out of it. This is the whole thing, you know. So I'd say cheers. I got a can of. Sure, if you're familiar with that, Del Casper, Let Dutch Gold. I was I wouldn't say I was out celebrating, but I met my brother for a drink tonight. He's sort of celebrating, kind of, just a change of jobs and just things are on the look up, you know. So yeah, have the usual. I don't like drink. I'm not a drinker. Drink is a poison, you know. But you always have to know when you've had enough. And your body tells you as when. At that moment, you can start peeing out more than you're taking in. Then you need to take heed. You know, the one thing is about hangovers. I realized this a long time ago as well. The reason we get hangovers is because we're dehydrated. You know, our bodies are telling us that this liquid that we're putting into ourselves in copious amounts is not good for us. So I'm going to get rid of it. It says. Efficiently and as quickly and early as possible, and you end up peeing out more than you are taking in, and you go to bed then and sleep 8 hours, you know, where your bodily functions are still engaged, obviously. At least the more fundamental ones are. So yeah, this all takes up energy, and you wake up then like feeling like a dirty dog, you know. Yeah, complete dehydration. That's all it is, you know. If you remember, no matter how much you've had to drink, if you remember to force yourself to drink 2 pint glasses of water, 1 pint glass at least, yeah, you'll be either perfect in the morning, or else, you know, you'll definitely be feeling a lot differently than if you hadn't had the glass. So yeah, yeah, drink is a poison, and we know it, and that's why it's so freely available as well. You know, again, there's drug dealers on every corner. So it's purposefully made that way. There are many different cannabis, of course, being one. It's not a drug. It's yeah, it's a natural. How would you put it? Again, we've been brainwashed into thinking all of these things. So there's no proper term for what cannabis is, I think, you know, but it's just natural, and it's for the thoughts of it been regulated or have anything to do with legalization is absurd, you know. But again, we've been brainwashed into conformity. I like it. Brainwashed into conformity. That's exactly what we have been going through, and it's exactly what we need to stop, you know. I mean, I'm sure we can all relate to this as well, in terms of trying to convince people to look into shit before they come to such firm and fast judgment. But they've been so brainwashed into conformity now that even the slightest hint or the slightest reference to the possibility that change are being yanked, or that they're being fooled or tricked, is heresy. It's, you know, worthy of crucifixion, which is the very definition of brainwashed, you know. And again, everything is flipped. Everything is absolutely flipped 180 degrees. Everything fundamental. That's a fundamental rule, I think. I think I'm coming through okay. I changed the power settings a little, which is the definition of brainwashed. Yeah, I think that's coming through okay. Let me see how I look. Everything's flipped. Everything's absolutely flipped 180 degrees. Yeah, I had oh, some sort of I think I'm going to you're okay. I changed that.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, hang on. It seems a bit stop-startish there.
Yeah, that's okay. Let's get a look.
Okay, maybe if I pop this one, maybe if I pop the chat out, the watch page, because I don't need to look at myself. Yeah, I titled it "Flat Earth or Beautiful Children's Dominion," and it's exactly what it is. You know, it is a flat Earth. It's not a fantastical, spherical, spinning, careering lump of molten rock. Okay, yeah, I have that on you, so that's what I can do. I'll pop out the chat. Yeah, so our beautiful children's dominion, and that's another line from a song of mine. What is it? Our world, our dominion. Yes, it is. Or their world, their dominion. Yeah, but I forgot about the children. Yeah, that's it. I forgot about the children. Hang on. I might give you a little glass of let me go. Oh yeah, I'm with you. But I forgot about the children. Their world, their dominion. Oh yes, it is. But I forgot about the children, their world, their dominion. So yeah, flat Earth, a beautiful children's dominion. And when I wrote that line within that song, of course, I had no idea that the Earth is flat. So this is our beautiful children's dominion, flat Earth, not the ball. Who wants part of a fantasy? That's like when they were selling land on the moon. That's a hilarious thought. That's to me now, like thinking I know what the moon is or isn't. That's a hilarious thought, you know. It's hilarious. That's all I can say. You know, in some sense, when you step back, maybe look at all of this, it's hilarious. There's some great humor attached to it all. So again, we're not privy to the greater story. And who knows, maybe once we reactivate or once we sort of get back or remember, we won't absolutely see the funny side once we sort of can recognize it, once we know. Because everything we go through, everything we experience, I think, is stored within us. You know, I was only saying this tonight, and this is not a joke, like, this is my testimony, if you will. And I really don't like lying. I really, you know, I never liked lying as well. I really never like. I'm never good at it, even though I could put it off, like, you know. But I just, you know, we know intrinsically that these things are not right. But I never liked lying, even though I did lie. We all lie, you know. But I did lie, of course, like everyone else. But now, I even try not to even white lie, you know. And I know that you can sort of end up twisting words around, which is sort of okay, you know. You don't want to be sort of telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth, because again, it gets you into trouble, you know. But yeah, you don't have to lie to maneuver your way through it. And again, you're with yourself all the time, so we should love ourselves, and we should know that lying is a manifestation of a sort of a non-loving mentality, in a sense. But yeah, how you doing, How you doing, Rolo? I'm not good. I don't call anyone Lord, man. Get the hell. But Lord Rolo, how you doing, man? I haven't, and I left you a message as well, and thanks for your message. But I haven't spoken to you in years and years, man. Well, a few years anyway. But yeah, good to see you. Man. How are things down under? I'm sure you're a definite flat earther. Were you on? Is that why I sort of? Were you an antagonist as well, Rolo? I can't remember if you were. I think you might have been, even though you were living down under, apparently. I mean, come on. Once you get to a certain point, the Earth is flat, you know. no matter what Simon Shack says, the Earth is flat. Simon Shack, brilliant model, SSSS model, cutting edge at the time. It was taking all things into consideration, except the possibility of a flat Earth. That's obnoxious. That's outrageous. You see, this is where we have to pay attention. We have to be able to read between the lines. We have to learn more from what is not talked about as opposed to what is talked about. And this is my point. It's our own personal journey. So we have to leave certain stuff behind, which is stuff that we know is not so. This is the point. And then we have to move forward looking for what is so. So, yeah, cool. So yeah, thanks, Rolo. And Arlen Van Vicious, how you doing, man? How you doing? Good to see you here. You have a lot of interesting stuff to say. Of course, you know my point of view regarding you, but again, nothing ever personal. It can't be personal against the man or the woman. I'm not saying you're a woman, but you sure do walk funny. Let me just say I have I have suspicions about IPS and his gender. He's in the news a lot these days. I think my camera is what the hell? My camera is sticking sometimes as well. So let me. Oh yeah, that's what I said I do. I don't need two cameras. That's the problem, isn't it? I don't need two cameras. I was going to pop out the chat. That's it. Perfect. And then I can close down the other camera, because then you'll still be able to see me. I'll be able to see myself. That's perfect now, yeah. So I can have, yeah, that's great now. So I can have that on the page. Yeah, that's perfect. Why didn't I think of that before? Well, because I'm a bit slow. I'm Irish, you know. We're a bit slow on the uptake sometimes, but we're definitely not as stupid as we're credited as for being, you know. Well, no one is stupid, but we all hear the terms dumb patties and, you know, stereotypical knockings. Okay, so let me just say hello to, yeah, Casper's. Well, I'm just going back up through the chat. I haven't read any of it, so right, cool. Yeah, I said hello to everyone else. So, how you doing, Stella Arthur? Are you Lord Stephen? No, that don't work, man. But anyway, I knew me and Del were on a hangout with again, I'm not calling anyone Lord. I don't like Lord Stephen, and yeah, we pretty much pegged him. I think Del, you'd agree, and I was also talking to Stephen separately, and asking a few questions gave me a lot of answers, so that's fine. But let's let the games continue, you know. As I described Stephen's model, and of course it had to be Lord Stephen. You have to introduce a bit of religious controversy. This is always going to kick up a little bit of stink, you know. And every good script needs a little bit of a stink kicked up. So yeah, Lord for that reason, Stephen Christ. And yeah, the model it comes up with then is as I've described it, an inversion of a perversion. So the perversion is the spherical ball from the flat plane, and then the inversion is having everything turned inside out, you know. Yeah, so that's Stephen's role, and there has to be antagonists. There has to be alternative alleys and pathways you can take. You know, and Stephen, fair play to him as an excellent model. You know, it's very, very persuasive and very, very in depth, and on its own back, on its own merits, it's excellent, most excellent. Of course, it is. Here's where Lord Stephen comes in. You have to introduce a bit of controversy. You know, this is what it's all about. It's role playing. It's deception within the greater game. You know. So you have to challenge somebody. There has to be multiple possible truths that the investigator has to consider before arriving at the real truth. The real truth will become self-evident, right? But only after you've followed the necessary steps in terms of a proper and coherent, and I guess maybe a heartfelt investigation. You know, this is where different forces are in play, I think, in reality, as opposed to the deterministic scientific evaluation of everything. You know, where all the answers B follows from A, and Z follows from B. You know, but what they never question is, where did A come from? You know, what have we to say about A? Because if A is wrong, then Z is wrong, and all the way through A to Z is wrong. And this is where science fails, of course, at the fundamental level. But yeah, there are deterministic ways are through. So we're dealing with different forces. And again, within ourselves, there's great power. Within the realm we find ourselves in, there's great power to be extracted, I think, you know, in every sense. So, okay, let's just read Stellar Earther. He says, Pete, have you heard the reports in the news about mega cryometeors, huge chunks of ice falling from a clear blue sky? A mystery, they say, but it could be from the glass sky. What do you reckon? Right, that's very interesting. That's this is a problem. This is a problem, isn't it? But it's sort of not as well, you know. Water can take on many different forms. It takes on pretty much every form. If we think of the water within our bodies, right, everything is based on water. All the liquids are based on water, be it from your tears to your snot to your saliva to your blood to your, you know, etc. It's your semen to your stomach acids to your etc. You know, your urine, etc. You know, so water can take on many different forms, and once we're dealing with, as I see it, sure, I understand what Stephen. So I'm going to discard Stephen's model off the bat because I don't think it's true. Okay, so the question remains, and he has many valid questions. But yeah, what are these mega cryometeors? Well, again, within my idea, water can take many different forms, and who knows what sort of level of solidification is happening across the barrier. I think the barrier is an electromagnetic barrier, and you have such extreme conditions of temperature and pressure and material itself. Now, what sort of material are we dealing with? This is the point about water taking so many different forms. It's pissing here at the minute. It's been nonstop raining for the last good few hours anyway, maybe all day. These clouds are not capable of just holding so much water. This is not what's happening. This is a constant process from the very top to the very bottom, and all the various forms of water. The water is dropping down and sort of coagulating, if you will. The conditions at which the clouds form universally across the plane are at a certain level, you know. And for me, this is based on a few things: temperature and pressure, the sun movement, but it's also based on the positioning within the greater electromagnetic field that we're under. This is what the ether is. This is what the oppressing force is. Pressing force is probably good. I think everything has been drawn to a null point about 20 miles or so beneath the surface. And yeah, we're in the midst of this magnetic field, which was never meant for us. It wasn't meant for us, you know. But we are exposed to it, and this is why we have all of these limiting conditions. And this is why we live such short lives, strewn with, I guess, in one sense, weakness and illness. You know, this is not how. Again, we're living in a broken system, so this is not how it should be, and how it will be. Actually, we're getting back to we're getting back to we're remembering, as I've used the term remember. We're putting ourselves back together, just to quote that line, let's see. Beautiful angels torn apart at birth, limbless and lifeless, I hardly recognize you. Yeah, hardly recognize you. So we're definitely something different than what we think we are, and we're under such restricting circumstances and conditions. But yeah, that's talking about. So water takes many different forms, especially as you go up, and I see, well, the way I see it, this is why the perimeter is ice. You have a leaky barrier. So you've got, if you go up, you just have the magnetic force, the electromagnetic force itself holding back the waters, right? So it's just the force, the barrier itself, and the waters there. But as you go around to the extent or the limits of the field, then you're meeting land. You're hitting ground. So when you have the water against the land, and you have the barrier and all of the stripping motion, then you can see how ice in vast amount could build up, and that's what I think is happening. I do think we live within an enclosed realm, but on an unnaturally enclosed realm. And I'm sure there are connecting routes to different parts of this overall realm. Again, what that is, that's another question. So we have to leave that aside. We have to focus, I guess, on our local Earth. But definitely the way I'm looking upon it now is that, now I'll bring it up in a minute actually, is that, yeah, Earth is just one patch, potentially amongst a greater system, and all the systems were connected in unison, if you will. Every system, every different patch has its own North Pole projection center, or core, and they were all working in unison at a point in the past, but then they all became separated. That's the way I see it. But that's going into what lies beyond our flat and stationary Earth. We can say that to a certain degree, that Earth is flat and stationary, but again, only in that limited sense. Once you go beyond that, you don't know what you're dealing with. If we're dealing with the magnetic field that's drawing everything into the center, any point on let's say a grounder sphere could draw everything push everything towards the center, as you'd find in a magnetic field of great strength. Everything would be pushed towards. Again, I'm basing this on the experiment where they show a frog, a strawberry, different pieces of matter, mostly containing water, all sort of within a circular magnetic field, and all going towards a null point in the center. So no matter where you dropped the item in, it would all sort of go towards again a null point. And it's just a law of nature. This is just a reality when you're dealing with electromagnetic fields. But of course, I don't know. Go to the Theoria Apophasis. That's a tough word to spit out, isn't it? But I mastered it, and I looked up Theoria. You can see that theory. It's based on the same word. Just to think about, to contemplate, to formulate, and apophasis. What did I say that was? It's a rhetorical device anyway, and I think it's about, what was it? Attributing an argument to your opponent for your own gain. You know what I mean? I think that's what it is. Apophasis. Apophasis. There's apophasis or apophasis. Could be either now like hypothesis, apophasis. So I think that's what it is anyway. It's a rhetorical device just to use a bit of trickery in terms of argumentation, to attach an argument to your opponent that he never was making in the first place. We get a lot of that in from the whole earthers. Well, water is flat. Well, hang on. You think that the sun is 3,000 miles away? Silly flat earther. This sort of stuff. Yeah, so that's what I think we're dealing with. So when we have the boundary conditions and you have the sun, it's all about the sun. As the sun goes around its path, who knows what sort of wake it leaves behind it? Who knows what sort of solidification takes place at different points in the boundary. It's a sort of a dynamic system, but it's basically stable, as we know. Forget about global warming. It's basically stable. Everything we've been told about history is rubbish. There's greater things that are going on. I mean, just the massive destructions that the earth has gone through or experienced is not down to random events. I mean, even when we think of the tsunami on Boxing Day, not Boxing Day, say St. Stephen's Day. When was that? 2003, was it? 2004. That was another psyop. That was, first of all, the cause was uncertain, and who knows who's blowing up. Look at the military might that's out there. So with the right malintentions, and it's possible, so dump a few tons of high explosives underwater, 100 miles out or whatever. That's going to create a massive surge. We all know the surge that a speedboat, I used to row. So you have to brace yourself when a little speedboat goes by in the middle of the river, even though you're on the edge, because you're going to get caught up in the wake. So tons of explosives could easily cause that. And again, media fakery, a lot of the stuff is exaggerated. They talk, again, it's like Iraq, millions dead. Well, what's the proof for that? So it's the same with that. Even though I know somebody who was involved in the 2000s, or in the tsunami itself, caught up in it, or I know someone who knows someone, and I take their word for that. So there was a real event. But again, if it was instigated by man, well, where's the danger that lies in nature itself? It seems to be pretty stable for the most part. Now, again, when we're dealing with an alternative history as well, who knows what sort of weaponry or power that is there. These are the bigger questions. I've made it clear that I'm pretty settled on this. Not that I'm absolutely sure or anything, but I'm settled on it that 400 odd years ago, everything was different. Then something catastrophic happened. At least according to the script, I always entertained the thought that this is all a simulation. This is all a sort of. I heard David Icke. Not that I listen to him anymore, even though his forums, David Icke forums, are very open-minded. There's a lot of great information there. One of the few forums when I used to go there that they will entertain the thoughts of 9/11 media fakery, and there was some great information presented. Again, undeniable after a while that this is the stuff we're dealing with. But yeah, I heard David Icke saying that just today, actually, a follow-on video. So I've just finished watching one video, and this one came up automatically. So yeah, these things are all these things are all known. I think they're known by lots of people. David Icke never contributed towards his forum, actually. He never had anything to say about any of the topics that were raised, and that tells you a lot in itself. You take the information and you move on with it. But yeah, sorry, I'm drifting as well. But let me get back to the mega cryometeors. Yeah, who knows what type of Libyan glass, for instance. I mean, is it coincidence that it's happening over desert areas? What makes desert areas desert areas? I have my own thoughts on that. It's connected with the giant trees. These are the ruins, if you will, This is the detritus of the where the roots of the giant trees, not the roots, they didn't go down so far, but this is of course where most of the oil is found as well in desert areas. So I don't think it's coincidence. I think oil is the lifeblood, or maybe it was, or else it's the rotting. It's the process of rotting, decaying, dead, once living trees. Of a different kind, of a different, an organic kind, but crystalline mixed with or organic, whatever. I mean, that's the way I look upon it, and hence all the deserts of the earth, also the deserts, because the sun. Yeah, well, what is the sun? Yeah, so it's not. Again, the system is broken. So yeah, who knows what sort of boundary conditions you're going to get, and what sort of formations are possible, including these potential mega cryometeors. So it's not a big deal for me anyway. We can't answer everything, and there's very little way to prove anything for that matter. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's not a big problem, I don't think. So anyway. Yeah, man. I don't, not that I take calls. I mean, just I'll give you a link, man. I'll put the link in chat in a minute, Rolo. I don't give a shit who thinks they have any power to snipe or shut down the forum. That's fine. I don't take too much notice of that. So I'll put that in a few minutes, and I hope everything is coming through okay. So, because I don't have it on the watch page now, so I'm just looking at the chat here. So this is cool. I can see myself, and yeah. So Sellerther says, Pete, nature plays tricks with the eyes. She's deceptive. She appears flat. That's the ruse. In actuality, she's spherical concave. People are starting to realize that now. It's obvious. Well, no. It's not obvious. You have to, and I read a comment today by a civil engineer, I think it was, a surveyor even, and he said, we never, as surveyors, and I studied engineering myself. I have the legal name has a degree certificate, but that's not to give any more credence to what I have to say, but I can get it. Civil engineers, surveyors talk about not accounting for curvature either way, either concave or convex. The Earth is flat because the Earth is stationary. Needs must. There's no escape. It's inescapable. If the Earth is stationary, right, and all we can draw in terms of knowledge is from our empirical learnings, then it has to be flat. Water is flat, and if it wasn't flat, whether it be concave or convex, if it wasn't flat, there'd be we wouldn't get to this point. There'd be tidal waves everywhere, because water would always try to find its level, and this is where they introduce gravity, and in order to cater for these problems that you'd encounter, just conjuring into existence these what would you call them? Non-realities. It's deception, So concave Earth has to account for the same sort of thing, and yeah. No curvature, man. There's no curvature at all. It's never taken into consideration. The highest variation Earth-wide, I've said this before, is wherever you find the highest variation in high and low tide. So I know there are places in Alaska that experience something like 80, which is a massive distance if you think about it, 80 meters. Of high and low tide, and some places don't experience one tide a day. I know what that is as well. If everything is stemming from the north center, like a suction, you have the water sort of traveling in all different sort of meanders. You know what I mean? It has to maneuver its way through the path of least resistance around to every little nook and cranny. So you could imagine some places just completely escaping any major variation. In the Mediterranean Sea, I saw it myself. I was down in Spain. Yeah, you very pebbly beaches. Isn't that interesting as well? Where I was anyway. But yeah, very little tide variation whatsoever. And when you quiz the ballers about this, again, anyone here, same thing apply. Well, I'm not. How does Stephen? I don't think Stephen. I haven't. What does Stephen think the moon is? I haven't looked at Stephen's work in ages. When I had him pegged, there's no point in delving too deep into it. Just like with the ball earth, there's no point in delving too deep into it now because I know it's not true. I could apply my brain trying to imagine what all of these different movements are like around the spinning ball earth, but it's pointless because it's just a mental exercise. We'll need to lead to no conclusions or relevant statements about the living, breathing reality that we call our existence on Earth. So yeah. The ballers are defeated immediately if the moon is causing the tides and it's pushing the water. It's so strong that it's pushing the water as it passes over, and it's also affecting the water on the other side of the earth. Well, what happens when it's going over the Mediterranean as it's approaching? So here's the Mediterranean. The moon is coming in. The moon is coming in, pushing the tides. It's coming. As we know, the moon is said to be going around pretty much the equator, just a little bit higher or lower. So as it's coming in over the Mediterranean, here the moon comes, it's going to do its pushing. Well, this massive body of water is subject to this massive force. Well, where's the movement? Shouldn't it push the earth or pull it if you want, whatever way you think the moon and its attraction, you shouldn't just see a massive inundation every day at the Straits of Gibraltar, but you don't see anything. You don't see anything because that's not how it works, man. When the tides that always surge from the north encounter the Straits of Gibraltar, right, the water will always take the path of least resistance. So very little of it will flow in and out of that little gap in the Mediterranean, and hence you have pretty minimal tides, inches, which is negligible. So again, this is ball earthers easily defeated, and that's just one area. They're easily defeated. They're easily defeated on every level. So they're history now. They're dead in the water. And again with Stephen, even again, as I said, it's a fascinating piece of work. It's a work of art, Stephen's work, but it's not his life work. And again, Stephen's an actor, so I'm not going to entertain that anymore, even though, as I said earlier on, flat Earth, flat and stationary Earth is not the be all and end all. There's definitely more around that. I was looking up I might read that comment I left actually on Space Cowboys channel. But yeah, the interesting part was the French Football Federation and their logo. And first of all, you see a cockerel, so that refers to the flat Earth layout. And you also see a star above, directly overhead, North Star, the constant. But it's all encased in a hexagon, six-sided figure, almost like a honeycomb section, you know what I mean? And again, anyone who's listened knows that I entertain the honeycomb idea of a bigger Earth. So it's chucking it down out here. And we have different climatic conditions in Ireland because, for me, the dome barrier, I'm not going to call it the dome, so you have a central point. So this is the north center, right? This is immune to it, or there's a different sort of barrier in place here. So everything else is coming out let me do it from the side. Everything else is coming out from like that sort of shape all the way around, right? All the way. How would you compare that? It's like, and I think it goes under as well. So you might have the other side. Let's just deal with this side. All the way around. So it's almost like a spider. If you can imagine a spider just but Ireland is sort of on the positioned at a point on the uprise of this barrier as it's coming out, as it's so Ireland is probably here, so the barrier, the sky is lower, whereas if you go south, then let's say Spain is here, so you have a higher, and then Africa, North Africa is higher still. Then as you go further south, it comes back down to being lower again. I think the important point is that it's not like a snow globe, even though we have to deal with what exactly is the North Star and what's going on there. I don't think it's a snow globe, so you had a null zone in the center, and then you have starting off from low, then rising up to high and back down to low. It's like the inverse of the Orlando Ferguson map, actually. And I think that's what's encoded into the Orlando Ferguson map, as well as some other things. So yeah, Ireland is at a lower point, and the sun, I think, is increased in frequency as well, whatever's going on. So the conditions that it helps to generate will be more extreme if the sun is hotter, So if it's hotter, it will leave its mark, and then it will move on, and then conditions will go back to being cold again, So you have those extreme variations, which will cause more drastic sort of climbs. And then as you go south, then of course you have pretty much good. The further south you go, the better the weather, and yeah, these are all dependent on the distance, relative distance from the barrier above. That's what I think, and if the Earth is if the Earth is sort of oval shape, you should experience similar conditions. You see, the globe is nonsense, and also the Gleason's map, I think, is not right. Of course, is not right as well. So you're not dealing with a circular shape, but you should experience pretty similar conditions all the way around the oval shape as the sun does its trek. You know what I mean? At similar points in terms of the distance from the land to the barrier. I think it goes up. I don't know exactly what sort of. I think it's a very gradual thing. You know what I mean? If we were trying to think of the scale, I think the barrier is maybe an average, maybe 100. I said it was for 111.1, which is the number of degrees they've attributed to, or number of kilometers they've attributed to 1 degree of latitude. So I think they've chosen this number specifically, and yeah, I had in my brain 100-kilometer high barrier already, so that makes sense to me. So yeah. Eye level horizon proves concavity. I'm going back now a small bit. I can waffle on, can't I? Will you hear me waffling on in a minute after I roll a number? Eye level horizon proves concavity. No, it doesn't, man. No, it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. When you rise up, you have more of the sky to take into consideration. We're not dealing in terms of anything that we're accustomed to. You know, perspective applies both up in the sky as it does down here, but we're dealing with different systems. You know, our eyes are very limited here on Earth because of all the obstructions, first of all, but then the major obstruction being the atmosphere. But sometimes under perfect conditions, we can see many miles in all directions, potentially seeing, let's say, 200 miles. If you can see with your naked eye a mountain let's just imagine a place on Earth, you can do that. I think there are places in many places, yeah, actually. With your naked eye, you can see something 200 miles. Well, then you can extend that to a circle, a radius of 200 miles, and that's a diameter of 400 miles. You know, all the way around. That's a pretty big area in terms of our ability to entertain or to make sense out of what we're seeing. But when you rise up, you see more of the sky. More of the sky comes into consideration. So perfectly reasonable for me to see the horizon drop slightly, not too much, but drop slightly. But perspective also applies up above. And this is the fundamental part that we have to remember. You know, if we're dealing with a contoured barrier, there's going to come a point where even if it was straight, it would appear to drop, you know, and that's where I talked about this sort of skull cap as you go up. And the distances, because there's no barriers, again, once you get above the atmosphere, light is free to travel, and it will travel endlessly. We know we're in a contained system, but we'll travel endlessly until it meets a border. I mean, meets something. And of course, it does meet something. And this is the key as well. The sun is everything, you know. We are dealing with a watery barrier, which acts like a perfect mirror. But the barrier is contoured. Now, you get a different result if you think of the barrier in terms of a snow globe barrier, as opposed to in terms of a donut, a spider sort of mechanism, you know, where it rises. And or because this is the thing about, and I witnessed this myself when I was in California, the sky just looked fucking further away, you know, it was like strange. And of course, people say, well, that's a different sort of atmospheric conditions. And sure, that'll come into it. But I actually literally think it's a matter of being further away as well. There's a barrier there. So again, the snow globe would say the opposite. It would say that the sky in Ireland was higher than the sky in California. And also, just to clarify that, I was talking to a Spanish girl. She said the same. When you come to Ireland, the sun is so much closer. Well, you know, so that corroborates that. And Jeranism and Morgul were also talking about some layer of the atmosphere starting off lower in the northern regions, rising up to a higher level. I think you mentioned 4 kilometers high, whether it was a mesosphere or whatever. Rise of, say, let's start off 4 kilometers, but rising up to 11 kilometers at the equator, and then back down to 4 kilometers at Australia or the extremities or something, you know. So that supports that also. So yeah, that is vital as well, what the shape and contour of the barrier might be. Again, when you're dealing with a perfect mirror and you introduce lights, well, think about it, you know. Think about what you might expect to see. And again, perspective counts. If you shine a light, so let's just imagine you're a massive giant and you had the sun, you're shining it across the sky. If the barrier appears, you know, from perspective's point of view, to drop, to curve down, it can only go so far. It will always meet the land. Well, then you'll be shining that light. It will hit the barrier and reflect in a certain manner. You know, there will always be a limit to perspective. We just can't see forever and ever. You know, that's not how it works. It will always seem to drop away. So yeah, we know what sort of distances we're talking about when the sun rises to when the sun sets. That's a vast distance in the sky, you know. But again, when you're dealing with a barrier, distances are not the same up there when you're dealing with lights, you know. So we can't equate what's going on up there to what's going on down here. 1,000, let's say 1,000 miles, for instance, means a lot to us down here. That's a long way, you know. 5,000 miles up there, when you have a light, you know, it doesn't mean anything because there's no interference. There's nothing stopping it. Again, if the barrier was a million miles away, which is not, if you had the same light, again, it's just if you had the same light and the same conditions, you know, then that's what you see. There's nothing to impede the light, you know. And then when it reaches the barrier, then you'll see a reflection, you know. If you extend that again and again, there's nothing to impede the light, you know, or the energy. So yeah, that's fundamental. And hey, PC, how you doing, man? Or woman? No, man. Why would this is why would the Sellers just says, Pete, if the Earth was indeed flat, the horizon would be way below eye level. No, why this is not how it works, man. And no, man, you're grand. It's not about guesswork. It's all about explaining it. Stephen might have the most glorious of models. The heliocentric model is glorious, isn't it? In terms of its sort of cohesiveness. but all it is a model, and it's a false model. So I don't go into these flowery old ways. You know, you have to be flowery, you have to be extravagant, and you have to prove everything or support everything. No, no, that's not the way I look upon this. I'm not out to prove anything to anyone else. I'm just giving my point of view on things, and you know, that's all it is. Anyone who wants to come in, just give us a shout. I'm going to roll up a number. It's nearly 1 o'clock, so yeah, I should have started a bit earlier. Maybe played a few more songs, but I might play a few quiet songs. It's just a bit late here, and it's raining cats and dogs. Oh, hang on. Yeah, see, I thought I was looking at the perfect synchronization in terms of me looking at myself now. So I hope that cleared up any sort of lagging problems. So Casper, Friendly Ghost, Pete, question for you and Chad. What is the most southerly area that detects the north via compass? Is it used in the southern alleged hemisphere? And if so, why does it not be attracted to the South Pole? Right, good question. Okay, dealt with all this before. No compass. All compasses point north. No matter where you are, all compasses will point north. What's the most southerly area? Not too far beneath. If we think about the path that the sun takes, not too far beyond that. You know, we know the sort of climes when you get up north. We know the sort of climates that northern Russia, Norway, Sweden, etc., Canada face. You know, so any substantial different distance from the path of the sun, you're dealing immediately in icy conditions. You know, so it's not too big at all, Casper. Now, what lies beyond? What are we cut off from? We're definitely cut off from a whole hell of a lot more. You know, definitely not an infinite plane, but it is something we're cut off from because again, I think that's the boundary. The boundary is where the waters beyond, the electromagnetic field, and the land. I think this is the important part. The land is they come together, you know, and then you have this water dripping, again, constantly dripping. I think the rain, as I mentioned earlier on, all the cloud layers at the same level earth-wide, you know. So we have evaporation via the methods that we know about, but also, again, it's fed from the what's going on here? It's fed from the shit. Hang on, not a battery. It's fed from the top as well. It's fed from the barrier. I call it rarefied water. That's all I can call it. Rarefied. It's just continually rarefied. So just as you have the transition from water, liquid water, to not liquid water, vapor, if you will. You know, put a puddle on a hot day. You know, so that's a transitional sequence. As you get into different heights and different locations within the magnetic field, electromagnetic field, and different conditions of pressure and temperature, the water will continually rarefy until you get up to the very top, you know, whenever, and then you have it at its most basic form, if you will, or one of its most basic forms. I think its basic form is water itself, because its water is beyond, you know. But it's a miraculous substance, and we've been led down the Swanee. We've been led down a completely false path in terms of everything that science has to offer, but we can't throw it out. This is the thing about it. It's a lie, but it contains truth, and all compasses will always point north because of a north center there. There's a magnetic north center, and this is the thing about the fabricated globe, and even the fabricated Gleason's map. We're not to view anything on Earthwide in a spherical coordinate sense. You know, we're to throw latitude and longitude out the window, And we're to deal as the Masonic square and compass tells us, we're to deal in Cartesian coordinates, in grid-like coordinates, chessboard coordinates. That makes absolute and perfect sense. You know, think about it. Every point is fixed from every other point. There's no curves to deal with. There's no to overcome. Yeah. So this is not reality. You know. So yeah, north. No matter where you are, everything will always point. Your compass will always point north, no matter where you are. So this is not. This is a fundamental reality of our life, but we don't navigate like that. We don't have to. You know. We just recognize the point at the north as being the X on the chessboard, and we can grid it out then. As again, I said this the other night, as all countries are gridded out. Look at your ordnance maps. It's all in grids. You don't see any hint of any spherical coordinate systems. It's only when you zoom out, Google Earth will show you that. Well, you're dealing with a big ball, so you can't use Cartesian coordinates in that. But no, we're not dealing with a big ball. You see, we're dealing with a big dodo. So, you know, this is where we have to rethink everything, and that's what the compass is. Let me actually, you know what, I'm going to go read the comment that I wrote, and then I'm going to have a smoke. But but yeah, just to finish what I think is going on, Casper, regarding your question, yeah, there is an outer limit all the way around in the same sort of shape as the sun, which I think is oval. You know, an oval shape, like a rugby ball, that sort of thing. And at the peripherals, yeah, you got boundary conditions. You got the barrier meeting the water, meeting the land, and this is prone to dripping. And over time, then you know you get a buildup of ice, like in your freezer. You know, so yeah, that makes sense to me. The sun follows this. It's like an athletics track, if you think of it in that terms. But again, picture the dodo from the head. The dodos from the head to the tail. It pretty much encompasses an oval shape, you know. So when the sun is traveling around, yeah, it behaves in a consistent fashion. You know, there's no great upheavals. There's no great variations. If you're a fixed distance from the sun and its trajectory, then you're going to experience similar conditions, you know. And there's a few other factors, of course, as well, but these are the major ones. But yeah, everything is pointing north, but we're not to use the spherical or the coordinate system or the current system for describing it, because that only applies to a fantasy. So yeah. Okay, I'm a bit incoherent there as well, but I think you get the gist. I think you could go, yeah, if we think about, yeah, compasses in the south, they will all point north. So there's a prevailing force, you know, and we don't need to go, you don't need to go beyond the boundaries. You can sure be working behind. Actually, if you went beyond the boundaries, you'd probably encounter another patch with its own north. You know, this is what I'm thinking. You know, those big giant balls, and they fold in, and then you just throw them along, and then it just springs out. That sort of thing. Each one of Earth could be a patch, and each patch has its own north center. You know, this is the sort of idea. But I don't think we should get too wrapped up in the north. In that sense, anyway, in terms of navigation, and I don't think they do. You know, this is where you have the as the crow flies distances. Straight line is always the quickest point between, or shortest distance between 2 points. But yeah, when you're trying to trick the populace, you have to make believe that you're traveling around a sphere. If you remember a few weeks ago, I asked one of the pilots, does he remember sort of constantly have to dip the nose as you would have to do? And he said, no, he doesn't. He never goes like that. He never sees this sort of curve. How would you put it like this? No, but what he does see is this sort of a curve. Now, the only purpose for this sort of a curve would be okay, there's maybe a few purposes. One might be that the prevailing winds will follow sort of a certain system. So you could be sort of going, as opposed to going through winds, or, you know, you could be saving time going around. But also, if there was this ongoing deception, this going around would fool the pilots into thinking that they were potentially going around the globe, you know what I mean? But again, it's um, such a shallow deception, because once you think about it, you know, how can it be? How can it be anything different? Again, if I want to go from here to here, I'm going to go. I'm not, or from here to here. Let's say I want to go. I'm not going to go. You know, no point in doing that. So this is all about this deception, and all compasses point to the north. Yeah, just specifically because there's a massive fucking magnet up there. It's a massive magnet, and that's where the electromagnetic field is being generated from. You know, so yeah, that's another question. What is that? Well, this trillions of tons of water flowing in and out every day, twice a day. That would power something, wouldn't it? Moving water has great capabilities. But again, we're dealing in systems, we're dealing in created realm. So we have no hope of understanding the mechanisms behind some of the systems. I think I've grasped what's going on with the sun, the moon, and the stars and the planets. But to say what is driving everything, that's an unknowable area. And I think, well, not unknowable, but I think you have to delve into myth and legend. You know, you can't work it out by logical deduction. I think you can work out the effects. This is what it is, isn't it? You can work out the effects by logical deduction. We can see the clockwork sky, you know, and it's clockwork almost for a reason. When they talk about the different movements and the various movements of the planets and the stars, well, think about it like this. If I have a bunch of lights and I'm shining them over a huge plane mirror, right, as a flat mirror, I'm going to get a different result than if I'm shining those same lights in a straight line along a curved mirror, you know, going into the distance. I'm also going to get a different result if I'm shining those lights and moving those lights around the curved mirror. You know, so if we take all these things into consideration, we get close to the truth. That's one thing I'm sure of. But so we can classify and clarify the effects. But in terms of the cause, it's like no, some things are outside of our capabilities of understanding. So we have to let certain things lie, momentarily anyway. So, well, exactly, Casper. How are we supposed to know? But again, we can describe or go about describing the effects, and you know, I think all of these things are perfectly well known. They're perfectly well known, and again, I'll tell you now. I'm literally telling you now. If we flip everything they've given us, if we flip it and we take it the earth is flat, and then we attribute all of these different and various and sundry movements that science has given us in that different sense, that these are the bodies that are moving, then we'll make more sense of it, you know. Then we'll make more sense of it. Everything is spinning around. Now, if there's slight variations, that again can be accounted for by the positioning of the light against a curved background, you know. And you can imagine over time the different. Mark Sargent talks about a planetarium, you know. Again, all dependent on the shape of the reflecting surface, if you will. This is vital, you know, and we can all relate to that. You go into a hall of mirrors, and one mirror will make you look a certain way, another mirror a different way, etc. You know, so this is yeah, this is it. If we take that into account, then I think pretty much everything can be explained. A few things that, again, we, we have to completely leave accepted reality behind, and delve straight into the what would sound and what would appear to be fantastical, but so be it. So be it. We know that nothing is as is described, so it is like something. So can we afford? Are we in the position to say that? Well, it can't be this. That's why Ireland Van Vicious. Yeah, again, lots of thought gone into it, and lots of thought-provoking possibilities. But you're introducing so many different variables that it becomes futile after a while, because in order to accept the validity of any potential model, you have to accept the validity of many different previous, I guess, assumptions or uncertainties. Yeah. So, yeah. Nothing in nature is flat. What does that mean? Of course, nothing in nature is flat. We say the Earth is flat; it has its variations. We can say that. Can we not say that? Imagine the nicest summer's day, and imagine the calmest lake. Can we not say that the water is not flat? Can we not say that? No, I don't. I don't say, if we can't say that that's not flat. What can we say is flat? Now we know we have the boundary conditions where the water meets the peripherals. And then you have little, maybe tiny. Imagine the calmest of days, though. You'll have the minimalist of waves. So if we can say anything is flat, we can say that's flat, because how could it not be flat? So I don't buy that. Nothing in nature is flat. But of course, you've got beneath the water, you've got various. And then here's the thing about moving water as well. If you have lumpy riverbeds, the water will make its way around that. It's like we'll go down and look at the archway, your local bridge. You see all the water inrushing and going out, and it makes its way around, and you'll always see turbulence beyond, where the water comes back to meet the other water that's already flowing straight through. And even within water will take the least resistance. So if you have water flowing and you introduce water from this side, that water, if it's a lesser force, lesser strength, because this is the water that came around the arch support, whereas this is the water that just went straight through. So this water comes in and around. This will then be deviated back or straight along. It won't push this water away. So all these different dynamics are going on. But if anything is flat, water in that circumstance is flat. Calm, a beautiful summer's day. Yeah. Yeah, it does, Casper. Polaris does move slightly. It moves in a circle, tiny circle. So that's a puzzler. I'm what is Polaris is another question. Actually, that'd be interesting to see. Has anyone actually zoomed in? Did one of the P900 zooms on Polaris? I don't recall actually seeing that. But yeah, what is Polaris? Right, okay. Just another thought. Thanks for the question, Casper. Another thought struck me. Okay. Yes, it does move, Casper. It's like if you imagine a bicycle wheel flat on the ground, you're just spinning it around. Polaris would be the closest point to the hub in the center. So it'd be very, very short distance, whereas every other point would be, located. Yeah, think of one of those professional bicycle wheels. It's full carbon. It has no spokes or anything. It's just a full piece. So if you drew little designs or little dots in those, and you spun the wheel, this is what I think is happening in general. But again, the contour of the barrier which it has been drawn upon is as described earlier, or something like that. So that will affect everything that we see and perceive. So yeah, Polaris certainly does move. Okay, let me. Yeah, I'm going to take a one of these breaks, and I'll be back in a second. So I'll just read what you say there, Casper. Man, in this day and age, why in the name of God is there not a picture taken directly under Polaris to be seen in the net? Well, I don't think you can get there, man. I don't think you can get there. The military, everybody, they can't get there. There's a boundary which they cannot penetrate. So the closest you'll get is many hundreds of miles away anyway, I'm thinking. And again, everything is a lie anyway. So any information we get about anything is coming from that. So if they're engaged in deception at a fundamental level, you can't trust anything. Why does my nose look like that, man? My nose looks shit. Okay. Yeah, you can't get there, man. You can't get there, but I think we can get there. I actually think the North Pole has been opened up since 2011. There was a weird article regarding the North being opened up to flight routes, and it gave a specific date in 2011. So I think that it's open for us if we want to take that journey, if we know who we are and where we're going. I think it's open for us. But that's a whole different kettle of polar bears. So, yeah, let me take a break for a minute. I love the rain. It's pissing for the night here. Sometime I'm sailing away. Actually, let me get up the lyrics. Okay. This is Spanish Boots of Spanish Leather by Bob Dylan. Again. Stevie's like this as well. I'm sailing away, my own true love. I'm sailing away in the morning. Is there something I can send you from across the sea? From the place that I'll be landing. No, there's nothing you can send me, my own true love. There is nothing I'm wishing to be earning. Just carry yourself back to me unspoiled. From across that lonesome ocean. Oh, but I just thought you might want something fine, made of silver or made of golden, either from the mountains of Madrid or the coast of Barcelona. If I had the stars from the darkest night and the diamonds from the deepest blue ocean, I'd forsake them all for your sweet kiss. For that's all I'm wishing to be owning. That I may be gone a long, long time, and it's only that I'm asking, is there something I can send you to remember me by, to make your time more easy passing? How can you ask me again? When it only brings me sorrow, the same thing I would know today. I would want again to know. Oh, I got a letter on a lonesome day. It was from her ship that was sailing, singing, I don't know when I'll be coming back again. It depends on how I'm feeling. If you, my love, must think that way, I'm sure your mind is roaming. I'm sure your heart is not with me, but with the country to where you're going.
Take heed of the western winds. Take heed of the stormy weather. And yes, there is something you can send back to me. Spanish boots of Spanish leather. And yes, there is something you can send back to me. Spanish boots of Spanish leather. Lovely song, very sad song, I think. I'm sort of into sad songs, I suppose. A lot of my songs are in minor chords. But listen, that's the way it is, you know. Some of the best lessons and the best loves come from sadness, you know. But that's Bob Dylan. Written way back, man, that must be 1962. What's that? That's 50 odd years ago, man. That's crazy. I hope that came through okay. I have to keep it a bit low because it's 1:30. Excuse me. Okay. I have no way of checking if that came through okay, but that's cool. I like singing that. Still pissing down here. It's a day for the... It's a night for the Laba. I just want to go through... Let me see this. Yeah. I found this. I was watching IPS last night, just briefly, with Jake, Flat Earth Asso, who's taking a trip throughout America, I guess. Lots of money been raised, which is grand, I guess. But IPS involved again. Something strange about him. I know he's an actor anyway. I said that, you know, be prepared for a personality to come on the scene and be aware, you know. So he seems like the personality in question. And I saw the clip associated with the billboard advertising and encouraging us to research Flat Earth, and made not mainstream news, but made local news anyway. And of course, a skit was made of it. But I thought the important part there was, from a skeptical point of view anyway, Infinite Plane Society. You know? So this is chosen purposefully. IPS as well. I was just thinking about that. IPS is very close to IPIS, isn't it? IPS. And I also mentioned IPS. I is 9, P is 16, S is 19. So you have 91619. So there's 9/11s encoded there all around. And of course, we know IPS has come out and talked about 9/11 being a staged affair, completely no victims, media fakery. So yeah, you can be sure this all counts. But yeah, I think the important thing there was to realize that, yeah, this is the central thing that will be taken away. I think Infinite Plane Society. People don't like dealing in infinites, you know, when the vast majority are
blindly accepting that the sphere is a reality. When you come along and start talking about research flat, plane, infinite society, you're going to be written off double quick, you know, because again, we don't like infinites and it's such a contrast. So there was no need for that. That's a provocative title in the first place. So again, this is all rolling out, been scripted. And we do well to be aware now what to do about that. And that's a different question, you know. That's a different question. No one represents me anyway, that's for certain. I should hope the same is applying to everyone who's not just listening now, which is very few, but that's fine. But just in general, you know, we have to lead ourselves, we have to think for ourselves, and not fall into the same traps that we have fallen into before. So I hope you can see my screen. I'm just going to go to the watch page again anyway. I don't like that term because Vincent uses it. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. That's coming up. I'm sort of going through this as well for the first time, but anyway, that's why I talked about that. In the background, there was a map on the wall, and it looked very much like the dodo, I have to tell you, and it's in here as well. And I just put a brief questioning comment. What was the map about, or where was it to be found? So he said it was what was it called? And I found it easily enough. Then it was the real map of the real Earth. So something like that, real flat Earth map of the Earth. So I clicked on this, and here we have the ultimate flat Earth map collection. And there are many interesting maps here, and I'm looking forward to going through this as well. This is from last year, August 21st. Only 33 comments, okay. Here are some flat Earth maps I've collected over the last 16 months. They're in approximate order from oldest to newest. Click the map to view the higher resolution image. Okay, very interesting. Now, what I'm looking for in general, all of these maps are of interest. Now, we're dealing with so many fabrications as well. So when I'm hearing things about like stuff from the 10th century, no, I don't buy that, you know. I don't even buy stuff Ptolemy now. I don't buy any of the ancient Middle East. I don't buy anything that's represented to us, because I think just over 400 years ago, everything was different, you know. So 2,000 years ago on a flat Earth didn't apply for me. You know, 2,000 years ago, sure, but the conditions were completely different. Just the realm was completely different. It was functioning as maybe it should, and will again. But yeah, here we go. The Piri Reis map of 1513. Now, I bet you, is there any anagrams jumping out there immediately? ISIS. I can see ISIS. IS. No, I can't see ISIS. Iris. I'll find one now. I'll find one, because it's all about the names. Like Eratosthenes is, because if he's a made-up character, right? If you're going to give a made-up character a name, you're going to do it for a reason. You're not just going to choose any name, and especially if you're engaged in deception, or even, I'm not even calling it deception now, it's sort of like a puzzle, if you will, then you know, you're going to have it encoded in some way, whether it be numerically encoded or just anagrammatically. Ooh, I like that, anagrammatically encoded. I'm not seeing sire. I see sire in the last word. Yeah, almost ripe sire. But I'm sure there's even the whole word in there now that will give us some sort of a clue. So I don't believe this is genuine. I take it this is Africa here, and this is South America. Now here's the problem I have with Africa and South America being so close. You have no cables running, so here you have no flights going from anywhere here over to Brazil, the peak of Brazil. So if that was close, or if that was reachable, yeah, this wouldn't happen. The cables all run from the North America across to Europe and down to Africa. There's very, very few, if any, cables running from this juncture here, this would be a great connecting point, and it's shown this way in many different representations. So again, I think we're dealing with a puzzle here, and we have to work out which is which. No, I can nearly see a word here, but what is it? It's almost like surprise. So it is actually. Look, if you look, if you go S and you take the I and the R as an upside down U, you get SUR PRI. Oh, we have to use the S twice. It's almost like surprise. Anyway, Flat Earth map, Monte Urbano, 1544 to 1613. I mean, how would they know this back then? Where's America coming from? I mean, did they discover that much of America in 100 years with the technology and the capabilities that we're led to believe? No, there's something else going on. These are fabricated, and these could have even been fabricated in the last few years. Actually, been fabricated 5 years ago in anticipation of all of this, back in the 30s, in anticipation of all of this. This is a good one. Our continent on the Mercator map of 1595. Now, you see, I don't believe this either. I don't think this is genuine, you know. I don't know, maybe Mercator didn't exist as well. But this is interesting. When you think about the Windows logo, I just noticed this tonight, you have the 4 aspects. And of course, you have what are the colors? Green, yellow, red, and blue. So this is very reminiscent of this. And yeah. So we have Norway at the top here. And this is very detailed, isn't it? I mean, why are we let's see this? You know what I mean? If the North Pole is off out of bounds, no one wants us going there. Who's to say that this is genuine, you know? So why are we getting to see this? These are the bigger questions. Yeah, this is Giovanni Domenico Cassini, Jean-Baptiste. The planisphere terrestrial. That's another thing we have to look at is the planisphere. It's going to be very interesting when I take a look at that, because it maps all of the circular the circular sky in terms of stars onto a plane, onto a disk. And that's pretty interesting. It's pretty appropriate as well. So this is 1696. Again, we have this short distance here between, no, I'm not saying short. I know the distance, let's say, from Ireland to Newfoundland is probably about 2,500 miles. But, you know, it's still the shortest point. It would make sense to have that sort of connection in modern terms. That's not a big distance at all. You can see that Africa has a fair sweep to southern Africa. And this sweep here, I don't think this is right either. Anyway, next. Map of the Heavens, 1699. Like Casper, you're still here, man. There's a Manny here, but that's grand. You play chess, cool. Maybe we get a chance to play chess someday. I've already challenged Dell to a game, and he's sort of at every hand's turn sort of made an excuse. You know, I have to change the nappies. I have to tend my rhubarb. So I think in my conspiratorial mind, and he's a bit apprehensive. You know. He kind of might view me as a dark horse, you know. That's of course if I was playing black. If I was playing white, I'd be a white horse. The island Friesland, it's all an anomaly. Is an anomaly for you. It's on older maps, yet it somehow vanished. The island between Greenland and Iceland is the same size as Iceland approximately. Yeah. Yeah, this is the thing, Casper, isn't it? Has it transformed, or has it been transformed or transmogrified into a different thing. Yeah, it's all fucked up, isn't it? I mean, look at the size of Iceland here and how close it is to Greenland. But anyway, I'm just going to skip over these. What I am looking for, right? If you could, this is the, is this the one? It's not though, but look, if you, I can't turn, how could I do that? Yeah, if you can imagine it, Casper, that Australia down here is the feet. You can see the bird. Look, it's almost like a vulture looking up. But again, it's a sort of distorted bird. It's not. It is not a vulture. And this head, this orientation of South America to North America to Africa isn't right, I think, you know. But this is an idea. That's a clear example of the dodo, isn't it? I can almost see the dodo here, but there's better examples again. So again, what I am looking now, see here we go from 1699, and this is a map of the heavens. This is going to be very interesting now. I'm looking forward to looking at this in greater detail. Let me click on that. Interesting. I think I have an idea what the planets are as well. Casper, it might be a good way to prove it. This is all very interesting, you know, and this is a fixity, you see. This is why, if you look up now, you can be sure that, you know, this is what's going on, roughly. But again, it's all about a contour, and if you this is like a 2D disc, just like a dartboard here as well. But if you can extend your mind to thinking in terms of 3D and imagining what I was saying earlier, that the inside here is a null zone, and then outside you have the barrier rising and falling, or as you're looking at it from the other side, falling inwards and rising back out. It's almost like a sombrero. That's what I was thinking about Pancho Pete, and I was going, fucking hell, man. The dome is like a poncho, not a poncho, a Mexican's hat. You have Pancho Pete then as well. So you can see a Mexican hat here. So if you think about the central aspect, if you think about that as the bump in the middle of the Mexican hat, and then you see the dome or the barrier curved in that way. A poncho, isn't a poncho? Sombrero, yeah. Poncho is definitely a Mexican name now. So this is Planisphère terrestre suivre la nouvelle observation de Tromea. So that's planisphere, terrestrial planisphere, following the new observations of astronomers. This is the one I think he had up on his wall. No, it's not, because it is a different. But you can, again, you can see the bird-like shape. But this distance here is not right again. So we move on. Planisphère représentant toutes les, in French as well, of course, l'étendue du monde dans l'ordre qu'on a suivre dans cet livre, 1790. So planisphere representation. Toute l'étendue du monde. What's l'étendue? The monde is of the earth, in order that they followed in the book. So I can't maybe to every country, every continent maybe of the earth. Look at how dodo-esque that looks, Casper. Man. That's 1790. Ardell, if you're listening in, I hope you can hear me okay, man. I don't know why. Is it cutting out, man? I don't know why I'm having difficulties. I don't know why I'm having difficulties. I should present it to everyone, shouldn't I? Okay, I don't know why I'm having difficulties with the sound. I have a minimal amount of folders open. So anyway, let me continue. So here we go. Here's the Gleason's map. I'm so glad I found this site now. Here's the Gleason's map, which we're so familiar with, as it is. But then they tell you longitude and time calculator. Now that would make sense for me in terms of the Dodo model, because you have a track. So think about an athletic track where you have a sort of longer straights and then, you know, circular ends. So you can define the longitudes a lot easier than you can define the latitudes. So we're dealing in different terms, and the time calculator then, the time is all based on the movement of the sun, and which is regular. And oh lovely, look at this man, the Orlando Ferguson Flat Earth map 1893. Now here's a good, let me have a chat about this for a second. Mark Sargent is all over this map, and then he left it behind. Oh, this is excellent detail. Now, in the right mind, Casper would recommend looking at this as a flat Earth. You have a contact, and then you have a convex. It's crazy stuff, like, you know. So we can write it off as just fantasy, or just has some matter going too far with flat Earth, or else you can look upon it in a different sense. That the puzzle and it's encoded. And here's where I think the encoding lies. We look at the S1 as a mirror of this one, an exact mirror. This one is an exact mirror of this one. So for me, we've been told to mirror what we're seeing in this direction, not in the vertical, in the horizontal direction. And if we do that, and we take it that it's a flat map, a flat Earth, right? We have to take that as a starting point. So then we're dealing with something else. What has been encoded here, and what I think has been encoded is the dome, the barrier. You know, again, you can see the null point here. It's interesting. You can also see a star, which is the North Star, but you see the sun and the moon revolving. So again, yeah, this is encoded. And first of all, the name Orlando, fear go sun. So yeah, these are all clues along the way. I'm not going to dwell too much in that, but yeah, look, I mean, look at how exaggerated this is. 1943, right? But look at how much more exaggerated that distance. This is very close altogether. So they're after sort of extending the hump of Brazil, which again, let me go down here. As the sun is set to come around, right? It brings its time zones. Now I know Ireland is in the same time zone as pretty much the south of Africa. You know, definitely the as we'd call it, the west coast of the south of Africa. So the sun comes around and meets us at pretty much the same time. So as it continues to come around the equator, suddenly it meets the east coast of Brazil here, right? That's fine. As it continues on, then you expect a few hours later it to hit the west coast of Chile, but not so in reality. East coast of Brazil, west coast of Chile in the same time zone. Now that doesn't have to be spot on, but it's going to be close enough. You know, it's going, we know it's all a fabrication, but they're going to be within minutes. They have to be, you know, because it's too easily verifiable. And again, another Hammond's air map, 1963. Look at how close it is to Africa. So all interesting. Within this collection, I think what I'm looking for is to be found, which is they won't be in the correct arrangement, but the continents will be in the correct size. This is the one. This is the one of the Flat Earth Society map. So that's interesting. Charles K. Johnson. This is the one that excellent. Look at this. This is the one that IPS had up in his wall. Look at how defined that is. You can easily squint your eyes. You can easily, first of all, you see what Mick reminded me of. He said it's like a blackbird, and then I was immediately hit my mind. It's a raven, right? But there's more to it than that. You know, if you alter it slightly and trace around, as I said, the continental shelves or fill in gaps, like, you know, the Mediterranean, just fill that in. Then you get a slightly different structure. Here's where the dodo comes in. Again, there's a problem here. How can the west coast of Chile, so let's say the sun comes around here, pretty much saying that the west coast of Chile and the east coast of Brazil are in the same time zone. Is like saying that Ireland or Spain here is in the same time zone as the Middle East, and we know that's not the case. The Middle East is 2 or 3 hours ahead, not more, you know. So again, these are clues along the way, but that's when I saw it up in his wall yesterday. I'm sure he picked that for a reason, and again, we're giving clues everywhere. So yeah, it's one. Now here's what I'm talking about. Look at this one. This is what I'm talking about. Casper. This is what I'm talking about, man. Look at this. So now look, and when was this? This was general map of the world. Again, Flat Earth Society. People talk about the Flat Earth Society being disinformation. I mentioned this before as well. Sure, they might be, but that doesn't mean there isn't great information there, you know what I mean? And look at this one. Look at, now we're talking about proper distances. Now, as the sun comes around, it's still a distance, right? But if you were to rotate South America up and around, I don't think, for instance, that this distance from East Coast to Brazil to Florida is that amount. It's too far. If you swing South America around and flip this up a bit closer, then you have a more accurate representation. And also Ireland and the States, you know. Look into the flight path of Lockerbie. Lockerbie was coming from America and landing in, I can't remember the flight route anyway. I won't say anything more about that, but it's strangely, you wouldn't dream that it would have blown up over Scotland, because they should have no business over Scotland. Now, Lockerbie was a hoax. Lockerbie was a staged affair. So in one sense, this could all be a clue for us, you know what I mean? I think ultimately everything is about us figuring out what's going on here with our world. So yeah, Ireland doesn't face like this. I think Ireland faces across Casper. So if you cut Africa and Ireland and Europe, leave aside America for the moment, just flipped it around. Flipped it the way that Africa is at the 3 o'clock point. That's the way we're orientated. And then you have to sort of flip South America down anti-clockwise, and the tip of Brazil goes right up, you know. Then you're talking about proper orientations, and you're taking away this bullseye stuff. This, you know, just overlay a chessboard is what you do. You can break the chessboard into as many pieces as you like scientific paper. You know, you remember that science book paper, graph paper. This is exactly what we're doing, and so this is what I'm looking at, is some map like this, right? Even though the orientation is wrong here, the continental sizes are right. So by transferring the continental sizes onto the dodo as is, you know, so I'm thinking that if we can line up, we know the size, if we can line up the dodo's bill is at the bottom, right? You can actually see the curve on the dodo, which lines up with South America here. So if we could pick a point at the top here, if you know that fixed distance, right, and transfer that to the dodo, then everything else here could be transferred in a similar proportion, you know, and that would give us an accurate relative size. The dodo itself, I think, is correct, you know. So And I think I can even show you that as well. There's a great little clip where they're updating for whether it's the National Museum or some official establishment, and the guy is an artist, and he's obviously well known. You know, he wouldn't have got the commission otherwise. But yeah, he's updating the dodo based on new information, if you will, and he's kind of slenderizing it. You know, he's sort of taking a bit off the neck. He doesn't do too much. He takes a little bit off the chest, and he's going through it. But there's a particular point in the video where you see him mid-stroke, and it's only about 5 minutes long. You know, it doesn't go into too much detail, but you see him drawing a few lines underneath the dodo's neck. And for all the world, you'd say it was the Canadian border there. You'd nearly immediately recognize America. So I think that's a clue as well. So this is a great. Thanks, IPS. I have to thank you for that, man. And again, when I call out people as actors, I'm not doing that to make any judgment on the man or the woman or whoever. I'm just calling, because I'm not an actor, you see. So as I have to call them out, and do what we will. I'll suffer the consequences if I'm wrong, and I'm always open to apologizing. But now, look, here we're back to look at this distance again. Casper, you know, they've shortened it again. So, yeah, the UN map isn't right. Now look at this distance. How can that be so far apart, you know? And again, these are anomalies that are, again, it's all a puzzle, right? So these are not incidental. I don't think these are independent efforts. You know, they're all connected. And so we have to look for the clues at all times. This is a great find. I'm delighted. Okay, here we go again. Here we go again. This is a contender here. This is a contender. Just one of those nondescript. Do you remember in the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade? You know, the simplest, plainest cup held the truth. You know, was the Holy Grail. No bells and whistles. Look at this. So I don't see anything. I don't see any descriptive information on this. It just says whatfetw.com, flat earth maps models. So you know what I mean, something like this. But look at this here. What's going on with? Yeah, look at this. Why would someone make a model like this when it doesn't ring true, does it? It doesn't ring true to our sensibilities. Because here's Japan here, you're going south. What's this big island here? You know, so that's, oh, this is a great find now, I must say. This is a great find. Excellent. And again, you have a big distance. This is what I think, this is why they have all the cable. And look at the orientation of America again. Brilliant. This has to be swung around though. I think there's even a greater distance between, but even when you flip Africa here in Asia as a whole, just Africa around to about 3:30 or something, you're still going to have a big distance, but it's not going to be so drastic. Australia would move around. Yeah, that's a good one now. So something like that, something plain and nondescript, which will, you know, potentially anyway, the correct jigsaw piece to slot into the dodo. The dodo itself is right, I think. It's a real representation, you know. So it's an accurate sort of scale map, if you will. Imagine, I don't know, Casper, imagine a few of the islands in Loch Derg. I'd imagine mapping those out. It would be simple enough, you know what I mean? You'd have your boundary conditions, your starting points, and you'd have your relative relationships between the different islands, whether it was 2 or 3. Imagine, you know, mapping 5, 6 or 7 different islands in a stretch of Loch Derg. You know, there's a fixed relationship to them, and it is ascertainable and describable, that relationship. So it's the same with the Earth, just on a bigger scale. Yeah. And I think these are accurate as well, because remember, if there was a destruction 400 or so years ago, there was a completely different realm, completely different knowledge, technologies, etc. in operation. I think some of those did make it over, you know. So all of these representations, I'm taking it, are accurate, roughly, you know, because we're dealing with different levels of technology that was available to the mappers. So yeah, beforehand, everything was different. Then we had an inundation, and then they mapped the Earth using whatever advanced technologies they had from the times before, you know. This is the idea. Real map of our home Earth. Okay, well, because it's so passionate, I'm going to say that's not a real map of our home Earth. You're trying to emotionally drag me into it. Yeah. This is a great, look at this one as well. This is a good one, because again, the distance is not, this is what I'm looking for most. Yeah, this is a good one. Again, the distance is substantial. You know, it's further from here to here than it is from Ireland to Newfoundland. That's not the way it's represented in other maps, you know. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. You could fill in all of this. Just imagine putting a big, massive plug in the north center and letting some of the water drain out. Then the Mediterranean would drain out. All of this Madagascar here would be connected, you know. So it would all have a slightly different outline. These islands would be, visible, and then you'd have a different boundary along here, you know. The Gulf of Mexico here would all be filled in solid, so you're getting a different shape, you know. And that's even the best part of the donut. You can see you can see the neck here, you know. But yeah, encouraged by this distance. I think it's even more exaggerated if you bring the south around again, because as the sun comes around, no, see, this is it. Yeah, the sun isn't coming around. The sun is coming in a athletic track, an oval type of journey. So yeah, this is very interesting. So we're back here up to the minimal distance. So I think that's the clue in itself. And again, look at here. Yeah, how could it be so drastic? You know, so these are clues in itself. This is a great find, actually. I appreciated IPS. Yeah. I'll just read a comment. Define map, a representation usually on a flat surface as of the features of an area of the earth or a portion of the heavens, showing them in their respective forms, sizes, and relationships according to some convention or representation. I think we can all agree these are maps. So this guy says, I think we can agree these are flat Earth maps. Naval navigators use a flat map. Aeronautical flight engineers use a flat map. Pre-GPS auto drivers use a flat map. Just another coincidence theory, I guess. I like it. I like it. Of course it is. Everything is a coincidence. Not. Yeah. Plenty to work with. Mark Sargent was on one of the chats yesterday. I think it was Anthony Riley's. I like Anthony. And yeah, of course, he was getting loads of stick from all the shitheads on there, all the antagonists. But I threw a few questions at him, mentioned the dodo and the Orlando Ferguson map, and he didn't, most unlike him, didn't respond. So I said, I'll take that as a response in itself, Mark, that you didn't respond. And I'm, of course, calling him Mark Sergeant Prepper. That's what he wants us to find out. So why wouldn't I call him that? Billy Liar. That bit. No, I'm not saying you're Billy Liar. Billy Liar used to be a TV series we had over here. Billy, how you doing, Mark? Good to see you. Mona G, how you doing? UTM map. What is that, Billy? Universal Traverse Mercator Coordinate System is how GPS operates. Squares will overlap on a circle, right? Jesus, you've gone in depthly into this, Billy, haven't you? I hope I'm not getting stuck or anything like that. Yeah, I haven't been looking at the chat. You're not seeing the dodo, Mona G. Well, it's not immediately obvious, but again, I think it's encoded. You know, when I when I did the tracing of the Gleason's map, but instead of using the continental outlines that were given, I extended it to the continental shelves. You know, in other words, I drained away some of the water, and then you can see the dodo a lot clearer. You know, and if there was an inundation, yeah, I think that would make sense to do that, wouldn't it? You know, if there was a certain amount of land. Well, see, if there was an inundation, how much land was there to begin with? You know, I think we can safely say that the Mediterranean Sea wasn't there at all, you know. So if you have such sort of relative hollows or relative valleys, yeah, you know, was there any oceans at all? Were we just always dealing with freshwater seas? And, you know, that's a good question. So yeah, once you do the outline according to the continental shelves, the dodo sort of appears a little easier. But of course, that's not the only clue that a dodo is involved. There's many other clues which I've mentioned, and I have some to mention as well. So that was my idea. I looked that up, Billy. Now let me just make a note of that. UTM projection, yeah, the square grid system, of course it is. East is east and west is west, Billy Sunday, and never the twain should meet. And I was talking about this the other day. I mean, these expressions come down to us because there's truth, a core truth in them, you know. Now, that doesn't apply on a globe Earth. You know, if I travel far enough east and you travel far enough west, we meet, you know, so that flies in the face of that statement. So therefore, one of the things has to be untrue. We know that the ball Earth is untrue. So therefore, yeah, east is east and west is west, and never the twain shall meet is true. And when you overlay the square grid on the dodo, forget about any other coordinate system, just the square grid with X, the very chessboard, that's how I compare it to, the very center square across, you know, over the North Pole, that's your grid system. One point is always in the same relation to any other point. You know, north is just a reference. North is a center point, but you don't need to involve spherical math or spherical coordinate system in the grid-like system. You know, you just don't need to do it. Again, no matter where you are, Billy, no matter where you are, Casper, no matter where you are, Moni, no matter where I am, he could point to me, right? Potentially, imagine you had the possibility of following your finger in a straight line, you know, through any obstacles. If you pointed in the correct area exactly, and you followed your pointing, you would reach me, you know. There's no doubts about it. And the same applies to each and every one of us, you know. So all of these things are fixities. So grid-like is the only way to go, and that's what this square in the Masonic square and compass. And the square is underneath, represents the earth. The compass is above, represents mapping the sky. Of course, you have the G in the center. Then the 666 in the center. Look at the G; it looks like very much like a 6, doesn't it? But if you look at the character, capital G itself, it has 3 separate movements. It has a swish, a swirl, circular movement, vertical movement, and horizontal movement in towards the center. That's all significant. So that's 3 separate movements, 3 sixes. That describes the 3 different movements when combined produce the path and the behavior of the sun. UTM. Okay, let me. Am I looking for again? I'll just type that Universal Traverse Mercator Coordinate System. Yeah. I'm sure they're not going to give it to us on a plate, Billy, you know. So this will be just a clue. I'm suspecting they're not going to give us the truth, but they will help us along. So I'm just typing that in now. Map, here we go, yeah. Okay, maybe I should look at images. Oh yeah, okay. Well, that's a projection map, Billy. Let me just share my screen. Okay. It's clearly a projection map, but that would be interesting. Yeah, it is a grid-like, isn't it? I'll have to have a closer look at that now. 6-degree intervals numbered eastward from 180 degree west. Right, and here we go again, Billy. Longitudinal. Where are the lateral lines? Where are the latitudes? Yeah. So we have the longitudinal divisions, which is what I talked about with the Gleason's map, that it's good for longitude and time. So this would make sense. Imagine you got this line. Remember, actually, here's a good one. Do you remember the film Contact? They couldn't figure out what the maps were about until they saw them in 3D. So this is, again, what we're encouraged. Imagine taking this side, like an accordion, and this side, and instead of squashing it in, curving it around, you know, this is what we're getting then. So that's why they're only describing the longitudinal lines as opposed to the horizontal lines. If you did that horizontally, yeah, that would sort of, I'd have to look into that a bit more, Billy, now. Again, this is what I think is happening. You're getting different clues from different maps, you know, so you take a piece from here, a piece from there, and you put it all together like a giant puzzle piece. So I can't say much more than that now until I yeah, so can you see that? You've seen that map, Billy. So yeah, portals. I don't go for it, Billy. I don't think it's any portals. I think it's a continuous system, and but it's just not the shape and nature that we've been accustomed to accepting. You know, the Gleason's map and the circular map has been thrown at us from the start, so it's almost as if it's ingrained in our consciousness. You know, it's the go-to point. So that's what we have to cast aside. But yeah, cool. I'm gonna have a closer look into that. I'll save that. Again, I think you see they're mapping 90 degrees. They're mapping degrees here. Every degree here is 6-degree interval. Every degree is 111.1 kilometers. And these numbers are chosen specifically, so they're mixing and matching. You know what I mean? They're combining the fabricated coordinate system of a globe with a flat projection, and you get sort of gobbledygook. You know, if you don't sort of separate it and decode it properly. That's my thought. Again, look at the gap here between um, east of Brazil and Africa. That's way too small. Look at Ireland. So yeah, this isn't right. But again, we're to use certain aspects of it, and um, yeah, and leave the rest. No, I don't think. Yeah, I think it's one continuous system, Billy. I really do. I don't think there's any stopgaps. This is how regular everything is as well, is because it's one continuous system. Now, the system is broken, but it's yeah, it's like it's like one of those, those, what do you call them? What do you call the carnival ride where you have, oh, I can't think of it, man. I can't think of the carnival ride. But it's something like that. You have a central point, and everything is sort of revolving, not in a circular shape, but as I said, in more towards an oval shape, or else like more so the athletics track, where you have longer straights and circular and something like that. And again, if you look at the dodo and you sort of draw around, well, there you have your oval um, track. So yeah, I'm going to save that and maybe have a closer look. You're obviously deeply researched, Billy. I don't think I don't know if I have the patience to go into any deep research anymore. You know what I mean? I think I'm just better suited to skimming over um, and garnering stuff from that, because yeah, I did get deep into it, and usually when you get so deep into it, the pathway has been laid for you anyway, and you can get lost in some of the holes that are dug for you. But no, definitely appreciate that link there, and also yeah, let me post the link to that website. Um, See, this is the problem when you start giving out wrenches, isn't it? That you don't want to sort of have anyone feel left out or not worthy or something like that. But I'd rather no wrenches, but I suppose you have to have some. The only thing is, I will ask you to please to keep it at a very very minimum. Even if there's trouble, unless it gets extreme. Mark Taylor and the likes are banned because you can't learn anything from him. But sometimes you can learn stuff from people who are antagonists. So I would just ask you to keep it to an extreme minimum. So I'm just I'm gonna take a cigarette break, and I'm not gonna stay on for too much longer. I probably should have come on a bit earlier, actually. If I'm to sing a few more songs, I might do it tomorrow as well, and just to sing a few more songs a bit louder. Um, I might sing one more song softly before I go, but I'm going to take a cigarette break now and see you in a second. This is composition of my own with no singing, no lyrics. That was a little foreshortened version, but yeah, it's a bit late as well. I haven't played that in a while. I haven't thought of a name for that either. So I could see I have a piano here. I can picture a piano mixed in with that, maybe something else, some a few other instruments with the bass. Yeah, that's about it actually. I did start a bit late, so maybe next time I'll start a bit earlier. Yeah, might call it a night. Still raining outside. I think we're in for a rainy one for the next few days, but yeah, I don't think there's anything else. Thanks for joining, Billy and Casper. You seem to be the only ones here, but anyone else who's listening, or Mona G as well, thank you. And yeah, Val, and I shall talk to you next time. I love you, Steve.